Hello, and welcome to Celiac.com news. Subscribe to our channel to get the latest celiac disease and gluten-free diet news. And if you have any questions, be sure to join the Celiac.com forum online at celiac.com. And now let's move on to the latest Celiac.com news. Is sourdough bread gluten-free? A complete guide for celiac and gluten-sensitive individuals. Sourdough bread has become increasingly popular thanks to its tangy flavor, traditional fermentation process, and potential digestive benefits. But for those with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, a critical question remains. Is sourdough bread truly gluten-free? In this video, we'll explore the science behind sourdough fermentation, how it affects gluten, and whether sourdough is safe for gluten-free diets. We'll also take a look at recent research and offer practical tips for those who need to avoid gluten. To begin with, let's understand what makes sourdough different. Sourdough bread is made using a natural starter culture of wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria, rather than commercial baker's yeast. This fermentation process can last anywhere from 12 to 24 hours or even longer. During this time, the microbes in the starter break down carbohydrates and proteins found in the flour. This includes some breakdown of gluten components. For example, studies have shown that lactic acid bacteria and yeast can partially degrade gliadin, one of the main components of gluten that causes issues in people with celiac disease. The fermentation also lowers the pH, creating a more acidic environment that may help break down gluten peptides. In addition, enzymes produced by the microbes, such as proteases, can break gluten proteins into smaller fragments. However, this does not mean sourdough is automatically gluten-free. That brings us to the next important question. Is traditional sourdough bread safe for people with celiac disease? Some research has looked into this. In one 2007 study, a small group of celiac patients was able to tolerate sourdough wheat bread that had been fermented for more than 24 hours, but not everyone could. The study concluded that sourdough might be tolerated by some individuals, but it is not universally safe. Another study in 2011 found that certain strains of lactic acid bacteria, like Lactobacillus sanfrancesensis, were capable of significantly breaking down gluten. However, in most cases, the resulting bread still contained more than 20 parts per million of gluten, the threshold generally considered safe for people with celiac disease. A 2020 review in the journal Nutrients confirmed this, stating that most commercially available sourdough breads still contain harmful levels of gluten unless they are specifically made and labeled as gluten-free. So, while fermentation does reduce gluten, traditional sourdough made from wheat flour is not safe for people with celiac disease unless it is certified gluten-free. Now, let's talk about a safer alternative, gluten-free sourdough. This type of bread is made using gluten-free flours such as rice, buckwheat, or sorghum. Like traditional sourdough, it is still fermented with wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria, offering some of the same digestive benefits. The key difference is that gluten-free sourdough is made from ingredients that do not contain gluten, and when certified gluten-free, it is tested to ensure it contains less than 20 parts per million of gluten. Gluten-free sourdough also offers additional benefits. It's often easier to digest because the fermentation process breaks down fermentable carbohydrates, also known as FODMAPs. It has a lower glycemic index than many regular gluten-free breads, meaning it affects blood sugar more gradually. It's also rich in prebiotics, which help support a healthy gut. However, even with fermentation, there are still potential risks for gluten-sensitive individuals. Cross-contamination is a serious concern. Many bakeries use the same tools and surfaces to prepare both wheat-based and gluten-free doughs. There's also the risk of mislabeling. Just because a product says sourdough does not mean it is gluten-free. In some cases, commercial sourdoughs include added dough conditioners made from wheat, which introduces even more gluten. So, if you're trying to avoid gluten, it's crucial to read the label. Look for products that are certified gluten-free and make sure they contain no wheat, barley, or rye. So, should you try sourdough if you are sensitive to gluten? If you have celiac disease, it's best to avoid traditional wheat-based sourdough entirely. The risk of gluten exposure is too high. Only consume sourdough that is certified gluten-free. If you have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, you may have a little more flexibility. Some people in this group can tolerate long-fermented sourdough bread better than regular bread, but it's still best to proceed with caution. If you're curious about trying it, consider doing so under the supervision of a healthcare provider or as part of a structured elimination diet. If you're looking to enjoy sourdough safely, there are some excellent gluten-free options out there. Brands like Canyon Bakehouse and Char offer certified gluten-free sourdough bread. You can also find options at local gluten-free bakeries, though you should always verify their certifications. Alternatively, you can make your own gluten-free sourdough at home using a gluten-free starter, often made from brown rice flour, and following recipes from trusted gluten-free sources. So, what's the final verdict? Can you eat sourdough on a gluten-free diet? The answer depends entirely on the type of sourdough. Certified gluten-free sourdough made from non-gluten grains is generally safe and can be a delicious part of your diet. But traditional sourdough made from wheat, barley, or rye, even if it's fermented for a long time, is not safe for people with celiac disease. While fermentation can reduce gluten, it does not eliminate it to the level required for medical safety. In summary, sourdough fermentation does reduce gluten content, but not enough to make traditional sourdough safe for those with celiac disease. If you want to enjoy sourdough without worry, stick with certified gluten-free versions or try making your own at home. To get the latest celiac disease news and information, be sure to subscribe to celiac.com news. Thank you for tuning in and see you next time.